everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Roland Rock podcast. I'm your host, Rocky McVeigh, and I'm here with my co-host, Roland Robinson.
Hey, everybody.
And this week, we're joined again by Jason Carmen.
Hey, everybody.
And we got a new one on this week we never had before. Our good buddy, Shane Harris.
Yeah, may never happen again, but let's hope it does, though. Thanks for having me, guys.
No problem. We've been wanting you since the beginning, Shane.
Glad to be here, man.
So, the theme for this week is UFOs, and if it wasn't for the coronavirus, we'd probably be talking more about UFOs. But it seems like the coronavirus kind of put this on the back burner. But if you didn't know, the fucking government just admitted that there's UFOs in February. And which I guess we've known about this for 2 years now. But in February, the government just straight up admitted it. So now we know that everything we saw back 2 years ago was true. And if you haven't seen it, you should look it up. There's there's hours of footage that was released back in 2017. The Navy had the video from some planes chasing I think it was 2 different UFOs. When was it, Carmen? You said it earlier. It was what, 2000?
Yeah, the first one was in 2004, and I think there were 2 pilots or 2 planes that were doing some sort of exercise on a aircraft carrier, and so they observed this. They call it the Tic Tac. It was like a pill-shaped object flying very erratically and pretty much in a way that's not capable, or we're not capable of, with known aircraft.
Yeah, wasn't it flying like against winds of like 160 kilometers or whatever? It was like some insanely high wind speed it was going against.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Well, there was also it would shoot up like 30,000 feet in the air, and then it would shoot straight back down, and it was an instant, and it was doing all kinds of weird shit.
Yeah, it was reacting to the pilots.
Yeah, what a lot of people don't realize is those Navy ships, the radars, they've got 3 different radars that cover certain altitudes. And, between 0 to 10,000, 10, 20, 30,000 feet, it was just zipping in between all those different altitudes, which was recorded. You can see all that on YouTube, I believe. But
there was one that I found really interesting. The guy's sitting there, he finally got it in his target sites, and he's sitting there talking to all the guys. They're all cutting up laughing because they're like, what the hell is this thing? What the fuck is it doing? And it would hover up, stop, and then just start oscillating, start rotating on itself, and then rotate over and go off. And they was like, how's it? There's no way it can move like that. And then there was another one where they were actually trying to get a lock. Like they were just playing a game. They were trying to get a lock on this thing, and it's a tiny little speck on the radar or on the screen, targeting screen, and it's zipping and zipping and zipping, and the guy finally got a lock on it. But nothing that would move that quick.
Right. No, it really is probably the most compelling footage, not only because of what's on it, but it was declassified by the Navy. And that pretty much confirms, this is a legit UFO.
Yeah, because you always have to worry about someone pulling a hoax or doing something to get their 10 minutes of fame. This is the actual military with actual military personnel on there going, what's going on. We literally don't know what this thing is. We don't know what it's doing, and so that there's a real level of authenticity and validity to that.
And it wasn't just like a atmospheric anomaly or something like that, because it was tracked on radar. And I think I'm not sure if it was the first or second incident, they said there was actually a fleet of them.
Yeah, I did hear that. He's like, there's a whole fleet of these things.
Yeah, the fleet, however many there were, showed, they only saw the one visually, but they saw the fleet on radar. And what was the guy's name in the first one? I keep forgetting.
Far started with an F, I think was his last name, wasn't it?
Yeah, but he was one of the pilots, and he said this thing was not making like sonic booms when it should have. It was traveling so fast, and the way that it was maneuvering, just zipping through the air and up and down, if there had been a pilot in the thing, it would have mulched him. Like so much G-force would have been applied to the thing.
He'd be pilot jello.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's the one of the most interesting things you bring up, Jason, is the fact that obviously it's not the first time anybody's ever seen one, but it's the first time that anybody's acknowledged it from the U.S. government. But the way that these things move and the way that it's always been described that these things move, there's no way possible, or so we think, that a being or a creature could actually survive in the G-forces that would be sustained in a vehicle. And, that's what's mind-blowing to me is, this is, like I said, this is the first time this has ever been seen or ever been witnessed, first time it's being acknowledged by the government. But most of the time it's described moving in these manners, and yet the G-forces, would be, no normal person could live through this. And that, I think that's one of the most interesting things. What are we really looking at here? Is this a man-made ship or a manned ship?
Right.
Or is this some drone or whatever that the aliens are putting out there? So that brings up a totally another question.
Well, that's something I want to come back to that point here in a little bit, because there's something else we want to talk about that has to do with this, and that's a good point that I want to come back to. But
is it a theory you have?
No, it's not theory I have, but it's something else we're going to talk about that brings up that exact point.
Okay.
But before we get into that, I just want to say that this whole the government admitting it thing, because I looked it up, and one was from 2000. One of the videos was from 2004. There was two other videos, and they were from 2015. And as Shane had talked about, we hadn't talked about it here, but we talked about this earlier, how these were actually leaks until now, because they weren't official until this year, basically.
It's been released twice, just once officially, right?
Yeah. So it was like in February through April, they finally started, it was all official, but it was not official back in 2017. But I actually, I know a few people that's been in naval intelligence, and I won't say any names here because I don't want this getting back to what I've been told. But I've heard stories like this from them about different things like this that's happened while they've been in intelligence. And this one, what I'm going to say isn't, I'm not going to say like any of the stories I've been told other than this. I was told by one person that was in intelligence that the government has a code in the books for signals intercepted by alien spacecraft, and every single intelligence officer is given this code, and if they intercept something, they have to report it under this code, and it's in the books. But of course, he was the person that told me this, said they had never had it, they never used this code, but it is the code that's given to every single official in case, because while they're monitoring everything, they have something they can use. So that makes me that actually has already led like to me thinking like, well, if you made up a code for this, there has to be a reason that the government like already put one of these codes out there.
Okay, we for my slow mind, will you repeat that? What does this code do exactly? So they have a code.
The code is just like, so like everything, you know, everything that goes through intelligence has to be coded.
Right.
Based on what it is. So like, you know, the intelligence agencies intercept all kinds of different stuff. So they encode it based upon what kind of video or audio they've intercepted. So, you know, it could be terrorism or whatever. I don't know what all the codes are, but there's a specific code that you would make something if you intercept this that says aliens from space. So it's like
so code Starman means that you've got some transmission from a UFO or alien or whatever.
Yeah. You have intercepted a transmission and you got to send it back to the Pentagon, and that's what you coded under. You're like, this is an alien transmission that we've intercepted. We're sending it to you to be decoded. So that already, like I remember this was years ago when I was told this, and I was like, well, that's something. This was way before this stuff.
Let's call him in. Let's get him on the show right now.
No, I don't think they would be willing to do that, but
we can disguise his voice and put like a shadow over him or something.
Give him the monster voice. That's interesting because, you know, the government will right up admit that they've been tracking UFOs in the loosest sense of the word. And not specifically alien intelligence. So that's kind of interesting because, you know, a UFO is technically anything could be a UFO. If you
don't you think it's wild that speaking of that, the UFO thing, they changed that. So like they no longer call them UFOs. And when did that happen?
I don't know.
Now they're UAFs, Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon, is what the.
You gotta love how the government likes to rename things.
Yeah, they love their acronyms.
Same damn thing, just different letters.
So now we've talked about them releasing it. So let's go back to your point, Shane. So this is something that we all talked about. We want to talk about before, but Bob Lazar. Now, if you don't know who Bob Lazar is, guys, Bob Lazar is he was a gentleman that worked for he worked for a company out in Arizona that did
and they sell like medical equipment or science.
Yeah, medical equipment, and they did like space stuff. Like I don't know, I can't think of a word right now, but aeronautics type equipment. And he got recruited while he was, or this is what he says, while he was working for this company, he got recruited to work at Area 51. Although he doesn't say he actually worked at Area 51. He says he worked at a compound that's close to Area 51, which he said was named S4. Now all of this stuff, this has been going on since the 80s. If you haven't seen it, there's a documentary that's out right now. Came out last year about him. I highly recommend it. I've always been kind of a skeptic when it comes to this stuff, and I think a lot of these people are nuts. However, Bob Lazar is very plausible, and when I watch his stuff, I'm like, I believe what he says.
Yeah, he makes a more compelling case for it than what was that guy we were talking about earlier?
Bill Cooper.
Bill Cooper.
Bill Cooper.
Yeah.
Well, Bill Cooper did come out and say some of his crap was literal that crap.
Bill Cooper was insane. I don't believe anything he ever said.
Including that his name is Bill Cooper.
The end of his life showed how insane he really was. But let's go back into this. So Bob Lazar is very. I do find him to be very credible. I don't know what you guys think about him. I mean, I know Shane. I know you've watched some of his stuff.
Yeah, I love his stuff. And basically, not just in the documentary, but I've seen him on other shows and other interviews, and he's basically like, if you don't believe me, I really don't care. This is what's happened. He's almost went to the point of saying, I wished I hadn't even came out and said anything. Because it's destroyed his life. The FBI, they raid him every chance they get. If he looks at anybody the wrong way, and the fact that he mentioned an element that got added to the periodic table 5 years later or 8 years later, whatever it was, that even adds to his credibility. So,
I think so this has to do with the documentary that they made, but one of the big things in the documentary that really I already sort of believed him because I'd watched a lot of his videos before the documentary, but in the documentary when he says when they're out, do you remember the part where he takes him out and the guy that's filming the documentary out in the middle of nowhere, and he tells him he has something to tell him. Mm-hmm. And then he won't say it on camera, but he tells the guy that was doing the documentary. And then it was the next day, the FBI raided his business.
Yeah,
that was, to me, that was how the hell? that just all of a sudden, he was going to tell this secret that he hadn't told nobody else.
Did
and
they
then
ever
the FBI shows up.
I can't remember, but did they ever say what he was trying to tell him off camera? I don't remember. It
was insinuated that he was telling him they still had some of, because he had said before that he still had some of the element 151 or 115.
Yeah.
And it was insinuated he was going to show it on camera, and then he backed out the last minute. He was he decided not to do it, and he was going to show him where it was at. And then the next day he was raided by the FBI after he was going to do this on camera.
My question is, if the FBI, does the FBI even know what the hell they would be looking for? Yeah, do they even know what this element looks like? Because the guy runs he makes fireworks, homemade fireworks, and they look pretty, not just these little homemade rinky-dink things, but he has the powder and the different chemicals, and they were showing some of that stuff. And if he had a bowl of this for this color of, firework and this color of firework. And if you had a bowl of the stuff sitting there, would the FBI really even know? Is it just that out there that you could be able to recognize element 115? Seriously.
Well, I would think that if you're going to raid the place and you're looking for something specific, you would at least send one person that knows what you're looking for.
This is the government we're talking about, though.
Well, that's possible.
But, don't you find it fascinating though that this guy's dealing with metal and basically crumbs and just mashed up metals and things and things that make big booms in the sky, and he's the perfect person to be able to hide this stuff, in container marked fireworks or something. You know what I'm saying? It's just very convenient to me that he makes fireworks, and he could very well have just made the element look like part of everything else. Maybe I'm reaching here, but
well, what really gets me about that whole situation was that they raided him and they gave no reason whatsoever for why they did it.
He said it happens all the time too.
Yeah. He was but they gave no reason. They were there for hours, and then they just left. There was no reason for them to be there. And as I watched this, I'm like, why you should at least give a reason. And there was no reason. It was just we came to raid you and now we're leaving.
What business was he running? Just out of curiosity.
What Shane's talking about? He does he makes fireworks and a bunch of other different kind of things. He runs his own business, and he makes things like this. He not just fireworks, but a lot of different things. He's the commission for stuff.
I would assume the reason they probably rate him. This is me just because I've not seen this, so I'm just grabbing at things. I know the ATF is really likes to get up people's asses, especially if you're dealing with any kind of explosives. So that is probably the precedence in which they tried to rate him.
I mean, there was really no reason given when they came. Like, they didn't really give him a reason. They just rated him, and they left with nothing. And I don't know. He seems to be very credible, and he does another thing that another item that happened with him was he. Of course, I mean, Area 51's been, the government's publicly recognized it exists. However, they don't tell you what the buildings are called or anything, what's going on in the place. So he says he works at S4, which is an area that's an offshoot from Area 51. It's in the same, it's not there, the pictures you always see of Area 51. It's off to the side of it, but it's not too far, maybe a mile or something from it.
Area 52.
Yeah. No, actually, that's in Utah. There actually is Area 52 in Utah. Anyway, we'll get back to this. It's an offshoot, and he called it S4. Back in the 80s, the first time he came out about this, he told this reporter out in, I think he worked for the Phoenix News or something. So he told this reporter, and the reporter tried to confirm this S4. He just wanted to confirm that this building existed. So he basically just called out to Area 51, and he was like, hey, I need to speak with somebody at S4. And the first time he called, some random guy just grunt answered and was like, sure, I'll send you over there. And he just forwards him over to this this building, and then somebody answers and just starts talking to him about being an S4, and just what's he would say he couldn't tell him anything, but he could confirm that the building and everything, and he was like, well, that's all I needed, and then he thanked the guy, and then he called back a week or two later, and there was there is no such place as S4. And to this day, they still say there's no place as S4. But he was like, I talked to the guys, and they were like, we're in S4 right now.
Yeah, those guys are dead now.
So that is something else that kind of leads credibility to him, because they're denying this place exists, but this reporter just somehow got through to some random grunt that just didn't know what he was doing and just admitted to everything.
It was his first week. Come on.
Man, intern, man.
And his last, yeah. Interesting little factoid. If you guys ever look up Area 51 on Google Maps, there is a baseball diamond there.
I've never looked at that. No.
You should. It's kind of neat and weird.
I know they've really expanded it over the years. A lot of the pictures you see of it, that we're used to seeing of it, is not what it looks like now.
So do you think they have field days for the people that work there, and they just have picnics and maybe go out and play baseball or softball? I mean,
yeah, I mean,
is it that type of camaraderie between these people? They probably feel like they live with one another. So, hey, let's go out and play some baseball. Let's go out and play some some cornhole guys or something.
I bet they have company baseball teams.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to get in that preseason for, Army versus Navy baseball.
So it's not like the Area 51 from Independence Day, where Data's they don't let us out much.
They don't let them off the base very much.
Well, now That is one thing. Like Bob Lazar talks about that, and he says there's a plane that flies
out of McCarran.
Yeah, directly to the base, and it takes people in and out like every day.
Yep.
And it's just the normal people that work there. They go in and out every day by this one plane, and so they do let them out. Like all these people leave the base pretty much every single day. None of them are staying there and living there.
So why can't like the media catch one of these people and be like, "Hey, what are you doing inside? What's going on?" I mean, why can't they do that?
Well, you sign. I mean, you got to sign like a huge NDA when you go in there.
Oh yeah,
and
let's kidnap one of these guys. Let's just take him.
Let's make them talk.
When you're signing an NDA with the federal government, I'm pretty sure that's. I mean, I've had to sign NDAs with companies that I've worked for about stuff I wouldn't talk about, like products we were working on. But, I would probably talk about that stuff. But now, if I'm doing something for the U.S. military, I would think twice about talking about it. When there's an armed guard right beside me, I would think twice about what I say to other people about what's in this NDA.
Yeah, the stakes are a little higher.
Good point.
So so now let's get to the point that Shane was talking about earlier. So like the way they move. So Bob Lazar mentions this, and he saw the video. And this is something that wasn't in the documentary, but it was he was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and it was after this got released in 2017. And he watched the videos and commented on the videos, and showed what he knew about the ships that he had worked on. So when he worked on the ships, he said that they have they don't fly the way that you think they would fly. So when they go up and then they're like a saucer shape. So they'd be like that. So you would think they would fly like that, but that's not how they fly. They turn, and then the bump that's on the saucer, that's what makes the propeller, and they shoot forward like that. And if you watch the videos, they have that shape. And when it shoots off, it turns exactly the way he says it does, and the bump is pointed as it shoots off. So that's what's giving it the force. And he's like, this is exact. He was describing it this is exactly what I worked on, and this is exactly how they flew, and that's exactly what it is that you're looking at on this video. So, and this was this was in 2018 or 2019 when he did this podcast. It was after all this had already came out
last year.
Yeah. So did you listen to the podcast at least, Roland?
I listened to most of it. Yeah.
So, once again, leading credibility to what he had to say.
Oh yeah. And during that, I forgot to mention this earlier, but during that first incident, the one in 2004, the pilot who was chasing this thing, one of the pilots, he said it disappeared from his view, and then the people on the ship who were tracking it on radar started freaking out because it reappeared about, I'm not sure, 60 miles away or something like that, which means it traversed that distance in about a minute. So that's I think it was 3,600 miles per hour. So that's kind of ridiculous.
Here's a thought. Now, this may be contradictory to what Lazar or any of the other ones are saying, but who's to say it's there's even creatures inside of it? Any kind of biological creatures for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, we can only assume, but we know
drones.
We know we have drones.
We have drones, and we are just now in the start of using drone technology on an everyday basis. We're still relatively new about some of that, and some of the stuff that drones can do is really interesting. So you take an advanced civilization. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, like those. I forget what I don't know the names of any types of drones that commercial drones, but some of the smaller ones I've seen are insanely maneuverable.
And sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, just extrapolate that over, some sort of advanced technology. It is, I don't know if it's possible by humans, but that's probably the closest comparison I could think of would be like an unmanned vehicle of some kind.
Right. Well, when you think about, when you think about space exploration, if you don't want to if you want to say these are UFOs and you don't want to say there's somebody inside, but if you just think about space exploration and the way we do it, we don't really send people. We send bots and satellites and other things. They do all this stuff for us.
Right.
It's only natural to think that if there is alien life somewhere else, they do the exact same thing. Exactly. They're not sending beings all the time. They're sending robots or probes. some kind of intelligent craft that will do the work for them. That contradicts a lot of UFO abductions and stuff, but that's not to say that if UFOs are real, just even if there is beings coming to the planet sometimes, that doesn't mean that every single ship has a being on it. It could always be robots on half of them, and then just randomly they will send somebody.
Right.
Because it's what we do. So why wouldn't it be what somebody else would do?
Well, that's why I was bringing up earlier, is because, you got, moving at these hyper, supersonic speeds beyond, 3, 4, 5,000 miles an hour, or whatever it is. But at the same time, you're talking about if this is going on, if, extraterrestrials exist and all that, and they have this technology, and like the technology you were talking about earlier, where, the spaceship, I saw that, it actually, when they flip over like that, Bob Lazar said that it takes the gravity, or it, forces the space in front of it to move around the ship, and thrust itself forward. Well, if you're talking about technology like that, what kind of technology they got inside the ship if they wanted to be inside the ship? What kind of technology they got inside the ship that prevents them from even feeling like, they're hitting a bump in the road? So, we're talking about something that, manned or not manned. If they are manned, they're already way beyond us, technologically, that they can do whatever the hell they want to do as far as, being the ship, not being the ship. I'm sure that, if they want to be in the ship, they got to figure out how they can do that. You know what I'm saying?
Now, I don't want to get too much into big conspiracy theories, but I have to bring this up. And this is going to be a stretch, guys. So, but I'm still going to bring it up just because I have to. So we don't know we don't know what these ships are. We don't know who made them. We can't say they're extraterrestrial. It's possible they could be human made. We have no proof that they're not, but we have no proof that they are either. But I just want to bring up the fact that in the 1940s, and this is going into, this is something that actually was documented. However, it's also something that is became a big conspiracy theory over the years. And in the 1940s, the Nazis were working on what they called the Bell, which also had this shape that we're looking at. It was pretty much the exact same shape as what we were. It was the Bell shape. And they had it. They say they had it in this ring, and it could fly. It could lift off by itself. So, I mean, there's all kinds of conspiracy theories about what the bell was, time travel, flying saucers, whatever. I mean, there's even the conspiracy theory that Hitler is living on the moon right now, and like so.
I believe that one.
So I don't want to get into all that, but it's possible that there could be like some kind of hidden technology that humans do have that is what this stuff is, and maybe even the government doesn't know about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's entirely possible. I mean, Occam's razor. I think that would be the most satisfactory answer.
Maybe Hitler's still alive and flying around flying saucers all the time, messing with our Navy.
Well, Moon Hitler.
Moon Hitler. He comes from the moon to mess with us.
So this isn't really too far-fetched for conspiracy theory, but you do have to take into account, are these retro engine, what we're seeing in these videos, is there a possibility, if we take into account that Bob Lazar was in fact, the real deal, and was retrofitting extraterrestrial technology into our tech, retrofitting it to what for today, could this possibly be something that he worked on? And they're test flying it out and seeing how pilots pilots can track it or whatever. Is that a possibility? That's one of the things I've thought about. That could be something that we've already started on. Another theory, kind of linking to your Bell theory, Rocky. One of the things, I knew somebody that lived in New Mexico. She's no longer with us. That lived in New Mexico during the 40s, when the Roswell crash incident actually happened. She was living there, and she would tell you. And this woman was never known to be a liar. She told me specifically, I don't know exactly what crashed out there, but I can tell you this: it wasn't no damn weather balloon. They lied about that. There was something out there they don't want nobody to know about. So if you think about that, so that to me lends credibility to some kind of UFO crash there. I've often heard theories too that during the 40s, during the time of World War II, aliens for some reason took an interest in Earth, possibly due to the war, and that there was contacts with Germany. The Germans actually had contacts with a lot of aliens, and that's how they were able to get a lot of the groundbreaking technology before other people. And then somehow the Roswell crash actually happened, and that's how we got ours. It's a theory, but that was something I always thought was an interesting thing, that the Bell and all of that, jet fighters, all of that was actual retrofitted. Nazis were retrofitting some technology that they were given from aliens.
Now that I've heard that.
Roosevelt was actually supposed to be in contact with aliens too, So, my question is, whose side were they really on? I mean,
I think they're just playing. They're just playing.
Yeah. Were they playing both sides, your guys, or what? So what's going on?
Well, maybe there's multiple.
That's a theory.
I mean, you do have so if we want to get really into UFOs, there's 3 different types of UFOs that is seen a lot.
I don't have my tinfoil ready for this, but okay, let's get into it.
But when I watch a lot of like UFO footage. So I'm just going to, and there's three main types that you see. There's the triangles, there's the cigars, and there's the saucers. Those are the three main types that you see like in all footage. So you got three different shapes of UFOs. Who's to say that's not three different species that's visiting Earth? If it is species, like maybe there was one, maybe the saucers was helping Hitler, and you see a lot of like triangle shapes here in the U.S. and we're the ones that came up with the wing ships, the wings, because that's the stealth bomber and all that. We got the wing planes now. Maybe we've been retrofitting the triangles, and that's why we have the wing ships now.
I have said that for a while. That I've always had that kind of theory that the stealth bomber is a retrofitted UFO technology because it looks like it.
And it was when it was being when it was being tested out, because it was tested out, close to around Roswell, and it was like reported as a UFO many times while they were testing it. They never publicly acknowledged that it was a plane they were testing. But after they finally released it, like the documentation showed that a lot of those UFO reports back then turned out to be the stealth bomber being tested.
Well, it looks strikingly like the lights over Phoenix back in, I don't remember what year that was.
97.
97.
Yeah.
It looked strikingly like that, but that ship wasn't moving. It was more or less hovering. I don't think their stealth bombers can hover yet.
Well, I actually wanted to speak about that, because there was actually the lights over Phoenix. There was actually two different reports that night. There was the lights, and there was also a triangle space shaped ship that was seen over the suburbs, actually floating over the suburbs. And both of those were separate. They were like two different reports on the same night.
Of course, the government's explanation was flares. They were being dropped. There was like a formation.
It's just funnier when you say it, Jason, than the government for some reason.
Well, and then they also backed out of that too.
They did, yeah.
Yeah, they said it was flares, and then they came back later and said no, and they went back to the old standby. It was weather balloons.
Weather balloons
with lights on the bottom of it.
I think it was the National Guard in Arizona attempted to recreate that formation with flares, and it didn't look like it at all. So,
but did they try weather balloons and flares?
Yes, they did. Like, I don't think it was the National Guard, but they have tried to do the weather balloons and recreate the Phoenix lights as well, and it didn't work.
Of course it didn't.
It's hard to get a weather balloon to stay side by side as you release them.
It's hard to get a weather balloon to do anything except drift through the air.
So I want to see weather balloons and flares in the air at the same time and see what kind of massacre happens with flares hitting a bunch of weather balloons. Just boom everywhere. You know what I'm saying? So I want to see that. I want to see that right there. That's what I want.
But there is a question that's often brought up whenever you're dealing with UFOs, and you've got all the different alien races. There's like multiple different types of species. You've got the Nords, the reptilians, the Greys,
the Draconians.
Yeah. You've got all kinds of those.
I have to. What are the Nords? I've never heard of the Nords.
They are tall, human-looking aliens, blonde hair, usually long blonde hair, very peaceful.
Greeks.
And very
Guardians.
Basically.
the complete opposite of our Vikings.
Yeah. This has been, I think that, when did this start coming? When did they start talking about that? Was it like the 60s or 70s?
Yeah, thereabouts, I believe.
So
what you just described there. So basically, what you're saying is that all of the species from Elder Scrolls are now space aliens and coming to Earth in spaceships,
except Greys as well.
Hey, guys, there's another. I don't know if you guys have seen it or not. There's another documentary. I think it's on Netflix right now, but it's called Unacknowledged, and the host on it is Dr. Greer. I don't remember his first name, but it is. It talks about Bob Lazar a little bit, but it is a fascinating documentary, and there's an actual report in there, and there's some legitimate, very logical and factual things in there. But there's one thing in there that Dr. Greer talks about, that there's a report released by the NSA or somebody that there is potentially that the government thinks there's 2 to 10 intelligent beings or intelligent life forms within our not solar system, but our own galaxy. That the government actually believed this and reported that in a report. And there's a lot of other great stuff in that documentary. It's called Unacknowledged, but I thought that was fascinating that the government actually acknowledged in some report that there could be at least 2 to possibly 10 alien races out there just within this galaxy. And, for them to acknowledge that in some kind of report, that shows that, they're denying all this for whatever reason. I don't know, but they're denying it just to keep us in the dark, obviously. But I thought that was fascinating. Don't know if you guys have seen it or not.
I haven't seen that one, no.
I saw a funny comment on I forget if it was YouTube or Reddit or something, but it was about the declassification of these, this UFO footage. And it's like, well, why didn't the government just tell us about it before? And it's like, well, you idiots went out and bought 6 months worth of toilet paper for a virus.
And that's a great point.
Yeah. How do you think people would handle aliens?
So I pose this question to you. Do you think that they've just been conditioning us over the last 70 years to slowly and gradually let this out? And, and maybe to one day be like, yeah, guys, they're here. Do you think that's, something that the government has knowledgeably been doing?
I don't know if they've been conditioning us. I also think that I was going to say, part of me wonders what the government's actually doing right now with because I've always been raised to believe that if the government goes, hey, look at this, 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 now I'm going to go over here and do this. Always keep an eye on what the other hand's doing. So part of me is like, well, during all this whole freaking mess of a pandemic one, if they're like, well, now's as good a time as any to go ahead and say it, because it's going to get out anyway. So, hey, guess what? Yeah, it's real.
I don't even think the government is aware of what the other hand is doing.
In this situation, absolutely.
There's a lot of the government has a very fractured it's very compartmentalized, and
that's very need to know. So
yeah,
and most people don't need to know what everybody else is doing.
Yeah,
I will. This is so I've always been kind of a skeptic. I really didn't believe in it, like aliens. No, I'm not saying I don't believe in aliens, because I do believe aliens exist, but I never believed that they'd been to Earth.
Because why would they want to come here?
I'd never believed that. But I have to say, the last couple of years has kind of started changing my opinion that maybe they are visiting here. Now, one thing I will say that I do not believe, I know I brought it up earlier with the bell and everything, but I do not believe the government is meeting with them.
No, I don't think that either.
And I also don't think I think that having to do with the question you posed there. I don't think. I think that's why the government hasn't brought it out before, because they don't really know what's going on. Yes,
Right.
they've seen it, but it's just as unknown to them as it is to us. So the fear factor kind of plays into it. Like they want to keep it a secret because they're sort of semi afraid of it because it's been going on for all these years, and and they can't do anything about it. So they sure as hell don't want to tell the public, hey, there's these people, this advanced technology that's all over the place, and they could just destroy us at any second if they felt like it, because we can't do shit about it. So that's sort of how I see why they wouldn't tell everybody what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing, because the most important thing is the government doesn't want to let us know just how helpless we would be in a situation like that.
I mean, if you could fly from one side of the galaxy to the other and come here, what kind of weapons have you got?
Yeah, well, that brings me up to another point. Is if they're sending manned craft, I think what is Proxima Centauri, 4 or 5 light years away?
Yeah, something like that.
So that's assuming if they can travel at light speed, which according to physics as we know it isn't possible, it would still take them at least 4 to 5 years to get here. That's assuming they come from Proxima Centauri. So 4 to 5 years minimum.
Maybe they've got an Elon Musk on their planet, kind of like we have.
Hey, they could.
And he sells these vacations to planet Earth. Hey, there's a vacation to planet Earth. It's the top tier guys.
Does that mean that our Elon Musk is the great value version of their Elon Musk?
Yeah, he's just way behind, man. A cheaper and not as good version. Right?
The great value version.
Wow. So, but no,
at least you didn't say the Dollar General version.
Yeah, the Dollar. But honestly, there is a question that I have with all of this: is why are they coming here? What could?
Yeah, curiosity.
If they're that advanced, I mean, that's the only thing I can think of is exploration and curiosity.
That's really I think if they're if there's an intelligence behind these UFOs, that obviously, I don't say obviously, but my theory is they're just here for observation. I don't think they've been abducting people and probing them, and
I think a lot of that. There's the brain can, for example, sometimes I would think if someone actually had a really close encounter like that, the brain does strange things when it can't comprehend what it's seeing. It makes up stuff to make it make sense to the person.
It's interesting after the first well-publicized abduction case. What was that couple? I forget their name.
The ones back in the 60s, late 60s.
Yeah, it was the 50s or 60s, I think. That's where the concept of the gray alien came from.
Mm-hmm.
But pretty much every abduction story past that or after that conformed to that idea of what an alien looks like.
And then you've got...
whereas before, that description didn't really exist. I think it's just oh, me too.
It's the Me Too movement of the extraterrestrials.
Right.
Well, the thing about abductions, most of them, is usually... well, I'm not going to say all the time, but a lot of abduction stories only come out under hypnosis. And even though at one time we thought hypnosis was a way to bring forth stuff, now study after study has proven when you put somebody under hypnosis, you start asking them questions, whatever you ask them, that's where they go. And then they believe exactly what you said. So like hypnosis is a horrible way to get somebody to say they've been abducted. And a lot of abduction stories that you hear, and still this day, like there's people that swear by it. They put people under hypnosis and bring out their abduction story. And it's just, I mean, it's just a crock of shit. So it is. But they still like promote it like it's like it's true, even though we know that we've shown study after study now that when you do that, it's just like you're just manipulating the person while they're in a subconscious state to believe what you want them to believe. And so I don't know if I believe in the abduction stories too much, but I would say if they are coming here for exploration purposes, they may have abducted a few people, because it would make sense. I mean, you want to like know something about who you're coming to look at. I mean, if you have the technology to knock them out for a little while and like bring them on board and study them and then put them back, I mean, why wouldn't you do it if you could get away with it? And you're definitely going to get away with it because you have all this technology.
Somehow they're just experts at just targeting the dumbest yokels they can find, and
but I don't think they're like just abducting every person they see and shoving shit up their ass.
No.
Well, if you look at it, I mean, I don't know how many abduction stories out there are. Let's say there's a million.
Billions of them.
Yeah. Well, let's say there's a million. And, if you say, 1% of that is true, 1%, you're looking at 10,000, say 0.1% is true. You're looking at 1,000 people. And that's still, a lot of people that's had something shoved up their ass. So, I mean, that's a lot of people, man.
There are some crazy abduction stories when you get there's absolute wild ones that some that I don't even feel comfortable enough getting into that I've heard.
Yeah, let's not do that.
But
I mean, there is one that's very well documented, and I'm sure we all Fire in the Sky.
Mm-hmm. That movie was horrifying.
That's the one. Like that's a very well documented one, and he's taken lie detector test after lie detector test, and his story was not coerced under hypnosis. That's just, he just told the story. All of his buddies told the same story up until the part where he disappeared, and but then he just reappeared all of a sudden, like days later. What do you think about stories like that? Like he also didn't think, he never said that something was shoved up his ass either. That was not one of his things about being abducted.
And I apologize to anybody that's been really abducted. I didn't mean it in a bad way.
Yeah, I didn't mean to call everyone
absolutely
a yokel.
I'll be abducted tomorrow. Nobody will believe.
And they're definitely sticking something up your ass, Shane.
You got it.
They're like, which one do you want, Shane? Come here. We choose this one.
I probably deserve it. Go ahead, Roland. Sorry.
I was just trying to think of a way I could work the word elegante into this episode.
Elegante.
No, but you got to think about that. Like, so you have the well-documented case, and there are some really well-documented ones. I cannot remember a lot of the ins and outs of this case, but you had the guy from Fire in the Sky. You also have a military. There was a military base. I want to say it was it either in Germany or Britain, where two guys this craft had landed in the wilderness, and these dudes had talked about this. they'd given their reports and everything. They'd found this craft that had landed out in the wilderness, and it wasn't for like a couple of days later. One of the guys that discovered the ship just started writing stuff down, just all this gibberish that he had seen on the side of the ship. I cannot remember for the life of me.
I remember something about the stuff on the side of the ship. I do remember that.
Yeah, and this guy was on a military base.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
These two guys were on the military, and both their stories were exactly the same. They had a lot of missing time, though. As soon as they got that, hours.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that one? Wasn't there like I think I know what you're talking about. And wasn't there like multiple sightings though? It wasn't just them.
Yeah.
It was like the whole base saw it, but it was like a lot, and then it like flew over the base, and then they went out into the woods to see if they could track it down.
Yes, and you know what the military officially said it was?
No.
Weather balloons.
No.
Oh.
Close. It was a like a light on a tower that they would have seen every single night.
Yeah.
That was just one of those lights on the towers over there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the same. That is the exact same instance.
That was in the 60s or 70s or something, right?
I want to say yeah.
Yeah, I know. I remember that story. Yeah.
So it seems like as we are getting further and further progressing down the timeline, that aliens are just becoming less and less interactive with us because we're just heathens and left to our own devices.
If I had to, say my 2 cents on that, why like you had a lot more sightings like back in some earlier time. I would say that it has to do with the biggest time that we know, like Roswell and all this. There's a lot of different sightings. You had the Russian crash that was also reported. All this stuff happened around the same time. So if they started visiting us then, I would say it had to do with the invention of nuclear technology, because that for the first time we had the ability to destroy an entire planet basically if we decided to do it.
The primates learned how to split the atom.
Yeah. So if that's what was going on, and maybe as it's went on, they've like seen that we finally understood, leave that shit alone. that's bad for you, because most governments are now like, we don't, just put that stuff on the back burner. We don't need it anymore. You have the little shit ones like Iran and places and North Korea that want it, but the governments that actually have the technology are now like, we're not going to use that. We don't want to screw the world up. So maybe that's why, if they're coming here, they've like decided to like back off a little bit, because they see that we're finally got enough sense not to use this world destroying technology.
So you got to think too now that all this has come out. We got to think, what else is actually real. Now, what I find interesting, Skinwalker Ranch. Now, that's an episode all in itself. Eventually, we should do, but there's been a lot of UFO sightings or weird transdimensional things that happen out there. So it's like, I wonder, what could possibly tie into that?
Hey, not to get off the subject, but I've missed a couple episodes. Have they ever like dug down and found out what's underneath the ground yet, or is the place exploded because they started digging, or what's happened?
No, not since I've watched it. No,
they're supposed to. They were supposed to have found like some kind of metal thing underneath the ground, and they were going to start digging. And
in Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah, and then like the telephone pole started shaking.
Yeah, did you know there's a TV show, right?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, there's a TV show. The guy that bought Skinwalker Ranch now started a TV show where he's like investigating it with a bunch of people.
Oh,
and the History Channel's involved in it.
I thought that's what you were talking about, Roland.
No,
Sorry.
I've known about.
Yes. Yeah,
Mine
Roland was
and
just talking about the ranch itself and all the shit that's went on over the years.
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's been a hot spot of craziness.
They covered the history in the first episode pretty good. So
I think I'd heard about it. I think I first heard about Skinwalker Ranch was in like 2007 or 2008.
Yeah.
Our mutual friend David Wu actually turned me on to Skinwalker Ranch.
I'll tell you,
Oh, I thought you meant Skywalker Ranch.
Oh,
completely different place.
still some
Now,
weird happenings.
The same guy that did the Bob Lazar documentary also did a documentary on Skinwalker Ranch, and I was he did the Skinwalker Ranch first, and I was like all hyped up to watch this, and so I got it like as soon as it came out, and I watched it, and it was horrible. And like there was nothing that went on in it. Like they showed nothing. And I was so disappointed. And then when I found out he was doing the Bob Lazar documentary, I was really disappointed. And I was like, this is going to be another horrible documentary. And I was really surprised when it was really good. I was like, because I mean, of all the stuff that has been said went on at Skinwalker Ranch, for the documentary to be so bad, I was like, what's he going to do with Bob Lazar?
Like, this sucks. There's barely any skin or walking in this thing.
So, not to totally steer topics, but I know we were talking earlier about like stuff that we've experienced firsthand. So who all here, Shane, have you experienced anything firsthand of the extraterrestrial or unexplained phenomenon?
I've never seen any green men or gray men or anything like that. But I was telling you guys earlier, I'm a stargazer. I love looking at the stars, and Beetlejuice fascinates me because it's about to explode, and any day it could explode or whatever. But I was a few months ago out in. I was actually in Pikeville and staying at a secluded place there, cabin, a bunch of other cabins around and stuff. And 5:30 in the morning, looking up, and I was just staring at the stars, and they looked really funny. And all of a sudden, they started moving, and I was like, "Stars don't move like that." And I counted like 15 of them, and they all just moved all at the same time, and then all of a sudden they got faster and faster and just went out of sight. And I thought, man, people are crazy for saying anything about this. And about 30 minutes later, there was this guy come out, smoke a cigarette, and they had a little smoking area there, like a little garden area where you could go smoke. And I was telling this guy about it. I was like, man, I'm going to sound crazy telling you this, but I'm going to tell you this anyway. And I told him what I'd saw, and he was like, kind of skeptical, looking at me like I was weird or whatever. And then about that time, we're looking up again, sitting there, both of us smoking cigarettes, and those same lights. He saw them too. They just kind of come over and just all in a row, like 15. We counted 15 of these lights, and they were solid white lights. Just like a couldn't tell how far away they were or anything, but they were all just moving in a solid pattern, same distance apart. He's like, man, I see it. And I was like, that's exactly what I saw earlier, just over in another spot. And, we got to talking about the crazy things like that. And then an airplane came by later. Of course, airplanes have red flashing lights, Well, as this airplane come through, and we were saying, yeah, see, that's an airplane. That's what an airplane's supposed to look like. But the other lights were just white lights. And as that airplane was flying by, those same lights came just flying, zipping around that airplane, just left and right. Couldn't tell if they were below it or above it. But I would have liked to have been the guy in the airplane, because I'm sure he had some kind of show, because these lights were just zipping around him like left and right. And, me and that guy, I told you, I said, man, I'm glad somebody else saw this, because, if not, they would have thought I was nuts. But, that's about the craziest thing I've ever seen.
Ramen?
I got nothing.
Rocky?
I've had one experience. This was many years ago. It was, I don't know, maybe probably like the late 90s. So it's been a long time ago now. And I was, I don't know, I was in my late teens somewhere, and it was on a full moon night, and my mother happened to be outside at the time, and she got me to come outside because she wanted to show me something. And the moon, it was a very clear night, like super clear, and the moon was huge and just completely full in the sky. And there was these lights, like they were white lights, and as just like Shane said, you couldn't tell how far they were away, but they were like just like rotating around the moon, just like in a circle. And then they just stopped, and then they started rotating again, just like in a circle, and it just like had no idea what they were. They were just weird. And then after, I don't know, we probably watched them for like 15 minutes, and they just kept doing that. And they would stop and just come stationary for a while, and then they all of a sudden just like bunched up and shot off in a direction and were gone in like 10 seconds, completely disappeared. And that was the end of it. And to this day, I have no idea what that was, but me and my mother both watched it, and we watched it for quite a while, like about 15 minutes, and no clue as to what that was. What about you, Roland?
I've had a couple when I was growing up out in the area where I grew up at. Very rural area called Sinking Creek out in London, Kentucky. I grew up on a farm. And I think my first experience with this, I was coming back from a Boy Scouts meeting. Or no, I wasn't a Boy Scout. I was coming back from something. I was with my friend Travis and his father, Jim. And we were down at my father and my uncles were working in the barn that evening. And they were, I can't remember what they were doing. That they couldn't be hanging tobacco that late. They were all doing something at the barn, and I was sitting there watching the sky, and I seen this object, a white light, like a white ball, zip up. I was like, oh wow, look at that. I thought it was a star at first, and then all of a sudden it moved. It went immediately beelined to the right, then zipped forward like it was coming toward us, and then shot off out over the woods, and then came back, and then zipped off. And I'd never seen it. Just something like that. It was just almost like done a triangle kind of effect, and then zipped out over the woods, and I never seen it after that. And then there was one time, and this is the only thing that ever messed with me. Was the time I ever wound up having missing time. Now Rocky will be the only one out of all of us that's going to know the distance that I had to walk from the house I grew up at to maybe a city block distance, maybe to the house where my father lived down below us. Remember the little white house with the red barn, Rocky? So I was walking there from the house where my sister was living. Well, yeah, how long do you think that would take you to just casually walk?
Just a minute or two. Not very long.
5 minutes?
Yeah.
If you're taking your time, 5-10 minutes. I lost an hour and a half. I left at 4. And when I walked into the kitchen, all the clocks read 5:30. Now, a lot of people could say, hey, well, that's just your clocks were wrong. I turned the TV on, and it was 5:30. I somehow lost an hour and a half on that walk. Still to this day, I cannot figure out what happened.
Was your butt hurting?
No.
Rocky asking the important questions
just
here.
had to know.
Bringing the important questions.
So did anything weird happen other than losing time? Did you see anything, or?
I had weird experience. Like nothing like extraterrestrial kind of thing. Like for a while, I was always paranoid that I was being watched when I was younger.
Because you were.
I know his family. He wasn't.
But nothing.
They were like, get in the yard and don't come back.
Daniels get together.
I didn't have any other cases of missing time per se. But I would have. I was fascinated with grays after that point. Like, just the. And of course, yeah, that was the time that was the same time, though. That was when X-Files was still really big. So, of course, I'm going to be into that. But those were the only two really oddball, interesting things that ever happened to me. But yeah, it's one thing. This is kind of beelining back to things in history. We did forget to talk about one thing. In Hopkinsville, Kentucky, in 1955, we had the Little Green Men attack a family. Did you guys ever remember hearing about that?
Yeah, the goblins.
The goblins of Hopkinsville.
Yeah.
Part of me wonders if those guys were just drunk on shine wanting to shoot guns all night.
Well, the goblins is another story that I definitely want to go into a podcast. So I don't really want to get into it right now. But there is a lot of stuff going on with the goblins and a lot of other things in this area. And we're going to do a podcast on that. I mean, we're in Kentucky. We need to talk about the goblins because it didn't just end back then. It's still an ongoing thing. A lot of different reports and a lot of different with the Mammoth Cave system going on. So it does tie into UFOs though. So I don't know, but we ain't got time to go into it in this podcast. But it is definitely something I do want to go into later. I also want to go into later on a later podcast about Bigfoot. But the only thing I want to say with Bigfoot with this one is that I do not believe the Bigfoot UFO connection.
What about the fact that he's the guardian of Earth?
Yeah, I don't believe that one either.
Well, that's new to me, but I guess you just told me everything I needed to know about that one.
Now, I guess we went over our topics for this week anyway, but I'd just like to throw it back to all of you guys and see if you have any final thoughts that you would like to say before we head out for this week.
Really crazy times we live in, because I waited my whole life for the government to say, hey, guess what? This stuff's real. It happened, and no one cared.
Yeah, I concur with that. That is, yeah, interesting days these are.
I don't know. As far as the UFOs go, I think that I heard somebody say the other day that, either we're all alone in the universe or we're not alone in the universe. And either way, it's a scary thought. So yeah. I agree with them. I agree with them 100%.
Universe is a scary place.
Yeah.
Well, as I said earlier in the podcast, I believe wholeheartedly that we are not alone in the universe. Up until recently, I did not believe that we'd been visited, though. But I'm starting to change my mind on that. And maybe we have been visited. These government reports are sort of making my skepticism go away a little bit.
Well, Rocky, real quick, what do you think about the cavemen that drew pictures on the walls of UFOs and all the drawings on the ground?
Ancient astronaut theorists.
Well, seriously, that they couldn't blame that shit on weather balloons back then and flares. So, something happened.
Well, yeah, I mean, but it could be, in their days, it could have been anything. You have no idea because,
As opposed to now, it couldn't be anything.
I mean, it could be anything now too. But like
today, it could be weather balloons. It could be weather balloons back then, pal.
But today we have more we have more like if you see something in the sky, like you're only seeing something in the sky, and you could be, it could be anything. But when you're seeing it in the sky and you're in the sky next to it, it makes it there's a little bit more perspective that you have on what you're seeing, other than when you're seeing something, a mile up compared to you sitting on the ground. So
I'm just saying, when you see something in the air and balloons don't exist yet. So
yeah, there's a lot of creatures that fly too, though. So
well, my point is, it's just, if they're visiting today, then there's a good possibility they were visiting back then. Maybe they've always been visiting. Who knows? I don't know.
I mean, it's possible. It's like you don't know when they evolved or how long they've been, until it had ascension, basically. So
right.
They could have been. And honestly, getting into more of scientific analysis, really, we should be able to look up in the sky now and just looking at the stars and find evidence of alien beings, because the universe has been around for 13.5 billion years, and based upon how fast life evolves and how other stars that were born and have died before our star was even born, if life evolves as fast as it did here on Earth, everywhere else, there should have been intelligent beings like way smarter than us for billions of years already in our galaxy, just statistically. So who knows? There could have been an alien race visit Earth 1 million years ago that doesn't even exist anymore.
Hey, I got a quick question. I didn't know if you was getting ready to wrap it up, but quick question. Have you guys seen the Space Force logo? The flag? What do you think about that?
Oh, God, I didn't see the...
And Gene Roddenberry's rolling in his grave.
I
don't know who Gene Roddenberry is, but I assume he has something to do with Star Trek, right?
He's the guy creator.
Okay.
Oh no! Are we serious with this?
Are you seeing it now?
I just saw it.
Yeah.
Look at his face, ladies and gentlemen. That was the face of disappointment, shock, and disbelief.
You do know.
I love it. I personally love it.
You do know that the Space Force logo is just the Space Command logo, like
Starfleet.
No.
Space Command?
Space Command is a government entity that's been around for like 30 years. And it's the Space Command logo. They just redid it for Space Force. So they've been using that logo for like 30 years already.
Oh,
okay. So is that
Gene Roddenberry's still probably pretty pissed off.
Is that what Reagan started up earlier? Is that?
Yeah. So Space Command is part of the Air Force and has been, and now it's been around for like 30 years, since like the Reagan administration.
And, but they shut it down or something, didn't they? Didn't they shut it down? And
no, it's always been going on.
Oh, okay.
There's always been a Space Command for the past 30 years, and just now, it's going to go away from the Air Force and become part of.
Now it's its own entity.
Yeah, now it's its own entity. Be part of Space Force.
See,
and they've got the Star Trek logo. I love it. I think it's great. I just want a suit and I could touch it and be like, "Hey, Roland, this is Shane."
You actually were bringing this up, which reminded me about that, because that was something I was going to talk about with Space Force. It was like, do you think Space Force is America's answer to? All right, so we're going to have.
I didn't want to get out of here unless we talk real.
So we're going to do Space Force.
Now, I will say. I mean, I don't get too political on this podcast, but I'm not a Trump fan. But Space Force is something that I entirely agree with. And I know that a lot of people are against it, especially on the liberal side. But No, we need Space Force, and we need a shit ton of money given to Space Force because it's the only way that we're going to get off of this planet.
And you said that the liberals are against this?
Oh, yeah, they've been against it from the beginning. They don't like Space Force at all.
Huh.
But I'm like, I mean, the only way that we're ever going to become a real spacefaring species is if the military gets involved in space exploration. That's the way it's always been. Once the military gets involved, then technology starts moving fast in that direction.
Where the money's at, baby.
Exactly. Like they have 1/4 of our budget a year goes to the military. So if you make a space agency that has that amount of money, you're going to the stars.
Yeah,
and that's
I mean, we're just giving NASA like $10 a year or something.
Yeah, they get like, I think it's like $25 million a year is all NASA gets.
That's pathetic.
So I mean, we need Space Force. I don't care what anyone says when it comes to that. Space Force is a good idea. It's one of Trump's good ideas.
It is a good idea. That's a much better prospect than war. That's a better use of the military, I think.
I really just wish he would have called it Star Trek. I really just wish he would have called it Star Trek.
Yeah, well, let's not kid anybody here. Just come out and call it Star Trek.
I mean, I'm still fine with Reagan's
Star Wars.
Yeah, I was fine with that. We should just kept going. We should have moved forward with Star Wars, I thought.
There are theories that the Star Wars program did continue on, and that we have orbital platforms now. Orbital platforms.
I think we could see those from Earth.
Let's just say that we'll end this. Well, I think it's time to end the podcast, but I just want to end it on this note before we go. Reagan had Star Wars, and he said in the speech that Star Wars was for one thing and one thing only: to protect us from alien invasions. He made a public speech where he said this straight out. And now that we've got like the government saying that we have UFOs, what do you think about that speech now? And like, how would that have changed the people's opinion if they would have released footage like this back in the 80s when Reagan made this speech? Because back then they just said that he was crazy.
Yeah, they had to shut him up, man, because he was like going on about, we were on Air Force One chasing this UFO, and they were like, I mean, his, cabinet people around him were like, shut up, Reagan. What are you talking about? People's going to think you're crazy. But he wanted to openly talk about it.
He did.
Yeah.
I mean, he did openly talk about it.
Yeah, he did. And, he even proposed that to Gorbachev. We're in the middle of the Cold War. He's like, if somebody from outer space came, wouldn't you join forces with us? And Gorbachev's like, well, yeah, I guess so. I mean, I'm not going to be the asshole who joined the aliens or anything.
Come on, Gorby. Let's go kill some aliens.
I don't know. Yes. I think if the aliens came to Earth, I would be like, can I be on your side? I think they got the better chance of winning. But that's just me.
Wouldn't it have been cool though to have been on Air Force One and hear Reagan say, "Hey, chase that UFO, follow that thing," and they gotta chase it. I mean, they ain't got no choice. I mean, it's
Commander-in-Chief.
Yeah, he's like. But even the pilot said that they saw the same thing. That would have been a cool moment. Hey, chase that UFO.
Well, I think I can agree with all of us when you talk about Reagan and all that, and the declassification of everything, along with Space Force actually being a legit thing now. I don't think it's coincidence. And shit got real.
Well, I think that's a good point to end on the podcast for. Before I go this week, though, I just want to say we've been doing this. This is be episode 5 now, and we're planning on doing it every week going forward, we're going to have a different theme. We'd like to start hearing from the viewers.
Emails.
You can always leave us, you can leave us comments on our YouTube channel, and you can also email us at podcast@rolandrock.com. And whatever you want to say, go ahead and send it to us, and we'll
just be nice. We're very sensitive.
We're not. You can be as mean as hell. I don't give a shit. I like the death threats. Actually, I think they're funny.
You're getting death threats?
Why would you bother?
Really? What have you talked about on this show to get death threats?
Well, yeah, you never know.
I'm pretty sure some people were pissed with our coronavirus episode.
I know there was some people pissed about our coronavirus show. I heard about some of those, but.
I don't know.
There was probably some people pissed about just wrestling fans are pretty hard pressed. So, I mean, there's our lists sometimes can piss some people off.
Yeah, that's a passionate group of people there.
I'll be honest. All I've seen is your wrestling episode. So I'm going to have to go back and watch the coronavirus, I guess.
I will say this, and anything and everything that we talk about, it is all personal opinion.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. It's everything we say is fact, and if you don't believe it, fuck you. That's
exactly.
Send those death threats. I don't give a shit. Okay.
Well, there goes the kind of demonetization.
Hey guys, I appreciate you having me on, man. It's been a pleasure. I've been bored out of my mind, and this is got my mind off the COVID-19 crap. So.
Good deal.
I appreciate it.
We liked having you on, and we'll have you on again, Shane, whenever you want to.
Cool.
Well, it was good having you too, Carmen.
Thank you, sir. Good to be here.
As always, Roland.
Keep it on.
Peace out.
Catch you later. Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Later on.